Considering home security? Consider this. For 140 years, ADT has helped stop more crime than any other home security company. The yard sign isn't just a sign, it's a line in the sand. It's no wonder 5 times more people choose ADT to protect their homes. Visit ADT.com to learn more. For license information and terms and conditions, visit ADT.com.
This is the Best of Mike and Mike podcast. Subscribe now by going to the Listen tab in the ESPN app.
The Best of Mike and Mike.
Back and better than ever, Mike and Mike, presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. And you know what? It had to go 7. This series, this season has been too good to finish with anything less. The Dodgers win last night, so all the chips go to the middle of the table. Tonight, Golic, one game to decide the World Series.
We always have firsts in baseball. There are more numbers than any other, in any other sport. Numbers. And the first last night was the first time the Astros walked off the field with Verlander pitching with a loss.
Correct.
How about that?
Yep.
I mean, he had been just an unbelievable get for them. The regular season, certainly the postseason, and he pitched well last night, giving up the 2 runs, though. Well, interesting, 2 runs to the 8-9-1 batter, so he comes out after that, not wanting to face him to face the heart of the order. But that was the first, because he was dealing early. You thought, man, if the Astros could put a few runs on the board, this one's going to be tough for the Dodgers. Problem is, the Astros couldn't put a few runs on the board.
No, and they had all kinds of chances in that 5th,
and
then again in the 6th, and then again in the 7th. And they can't get the big hit when they need to on the road. It seems that they hit home runs at home, and then they just can't score when they get away from home. The same thing actually happened with the Yankees in this postseason, and now it's been the case with the Astros. It's been a magnificent series, and obviously it's a jam-packed morning with the first college football rankings last night. I told you Notre Dame was going to be right up there.
You did, and they are.
And indeed they are, and we'll have plenty of that for you this morning as well. There's a ton to get to. Let's start it off fast here. Let's go right off the top. Dodgers force a Game 7 with a 3-1 win in Game 6.
Yeah, impressive, and it was Jock Peterson, the 7th inning. He hits that home run, became the 4th player in franchise history with at least 3 home runs now in a World Series. Reggie Smith, Davey Lopes, and Duke Snider did it a couple times. And he has an extra base hit in 5 straight games, tying the World Series record most recently done by Amos Otis in 1980. So big hit for him. Certainly different from the big offensive explosions out of Houston, where we've seen double-digit hits. I think they only had 6 last night. So, as far as pitching, Rich Hill threw another. It was ticked again.
That's your guy. Golic has fallen in love with Rich Hill. I don't blame you.
I'm such a fan of Rich Hill. 18 batters, and they yank him. He's throwing well. 19 batters last night. He's throwing well. He's throwing stuff in the dugout. He's all ticked off. And in comes Brendan Morrow, who the last time we talked about him, we talked about his 6 pitches where he got destroyed. And he came in and got the job
facing
done.
the extraordinarily hot Bregman, and they get out of the inning.
And then Kenley Jensen, he finishes it up, 6 up, 6 down, 3 strikeouts. That's what their bullpen has been used to doing. It's amazing what they can do with a little rest.
And so on we go to Game 7, the World Series, and the season will culminate tonight in a winner-take-all Game 7 in L.A.
Lance McCullers and Yu Darvish. Darvish, just got shelled in Game 3 when he started. McCullers didn't have great control, had 4 walks, did give up a few runs as well, but certainly threw better than Darvish, who struggled. So they'll be looking for you to obviously pick it up tonight. But listen, it's Game 7. You're waiting for when's Kershaw coming in? When's Keuchel coming in? This is for a league that plays 162 games, lives its postseason by a series. Now this is like my sport, football. Winner take all, 1 game. Loser, your season's over. You're known as a World Series loser, winner. The confetti drops on you.
Back-to-back years, we get Game 7.
Off the top.
All right, Georgia is number 1 in the initial release of the college football playoff rankings. Is that very significant? I think it is. But obviously it's what comes after Georgia and Alabama that is really significant, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about with this. But to me, I don't think it's overly significant with Georgia 1 and Bama 2, knowing that they meet up they can in the SEC title game. The one common opponent the rest of the way is going to be Auburn. Auburn can muck it all up possibly because they play both those teams. First time Georgia has been ranked since they were number 9 in 2014. Alabama, you used to have it at the top. Notre Dame was the one where a lot of people like you thought they'd be in. I was kind of holding my breath on that and seeing where that was going to happen. But to me, it didn't matter if they were in, if they were right in, or if they were 5 or 6 first ones out. Rarely, we never see more than 2 from the initial rankings end up in the Final Four in the last rankings when it counts the most, and we'll get into that more. But they end up being number 3, Clemson number 4, and they did put Oklahoma ahead of Ohio State. It looks like they did take the head-to-head into consideration without question here, as Oklahoma is one slot above OSU.
I think it does matter, and what I said to you yesterday was watch where they are in relation to Clemson, but. So they put them ahead of Clemson, but they gave Clemson enormous respect.
They did, yes,
which I think is accurate, appropriate. Anyway, we'll get it.
There's a lot to get into.
All of that yet here. The NFL trade deadline comes and goes, and a lot of deals. We talked a lot yesterday about some of the big trades that were made. The Ajayi deal goes down right towards the end of our show, and then as the day went on, Kelvin Benjamin traded from Carolina to Buffalo.
Yeah, he was the third leading receiver behind McCaffrey and behind Funchess, but it was close there. This is a former first-round pick. On trade deadline from 2014 to 2016, on the trade deadline day, there were 3 trades during those 3 years. Yesterday, there were 3 trades on the last day, and there could have been a 4th. There could have been a 4th.
Close, but no cigar.
Between Cincinnati and the Cleveland Browns. Another thing we'll get into.
Well, my goodness. You want to talk about bordering on ridiculous at this point.
Off the top.
Finally, the Zeke Elliott thing.
Oh.
Is it finally over? Is this a final decision now? Is his suspension now in place and he's going to miss the next 6 games? Because just when it seemed like that was the news yesterday, you get word that, well, there's still another court that the Players Association can take this to. So I guess we're still not 100% certain if Zeke Elliott is going to be suspended right now.
First thing the Players Association did, they asked the judge who made the last ruling to suspend her Monday ruling, reinstating the suspension she reinstated the suspension during an appeal. The union asked her to don't do that or
not
suspend that,
right?
Take that away so Elliott can play. She refused, so the file has moved to the appeals court, and your guess is as good as ours.
Yeah, seriously, we're going to stop following that. At some point, we'll just put the game on this weekend, and either he'll be on the field or he won't.
Exactly right.
That's Mike and Mike, and it's Off the Top, and that's presented by Progressive Insurance. They'll compare rates for you so you get the best deal, even if it's not with Progressive, saving you time and money. Now, that's Progressive. Call or click today. And just to be clear, so that anyone listening might not get the wrong impression, if this matter that is being adjudicated involving Zeke Elliott had anything whatsoever to do with domestic violence, then Mike and I would certainly not be treating it flippantly in this manner. That's an extraordinarily important situation and an extraordinarily important topic that began all of this.
Right.
But this has long since ceased to be about that.
Right.
What is happening in court right now between the owners, between the commissioner and the and the Players Association, with Zeke Elliott in the middle of it and Jerry Jones on the outside throwing daggers, has nothing whatsoever to do with what Zeke Elliott did or did not do. And that is the reason I think that it is okay to say, listen, I'm sick to death of the back and forth. Just make a decision already.
As simply as we can put it, you tell me if we can make it even simpler. The league put a committee together, but basically at the end of it all said, we have the power through the CBA to do this, and this is what we're doing. And the union has basically said, well, even though you have that power, you did it wrong. We don't like the procedure and the way you did it, so we're going to fight it in court.
Yeah.
And that's where we are.
And the union, I think they have a vested interest in fighting it, because what has happened is the collective bargaining agreement gives basically unlimited power to the commissioner, and the only way the union can get that away from him is to find a court that rules that he handled it wrong. So they just keep trying, and they keep looking, and they tried with Brady, and now they're trying with Zeke, and we'll see. And the irony in all of this is that Jerry Jones is on the outside, who could not have been more supportive of Goodell during the Deflategate thing, and now all of a sudden this is an overcorrection.
Overcorrection that he called by Roger Goodell, and he's the one that seems to be gumming up the works for Roger Goodell's extension. So we don't know where that's going to go between owners and the commissioner. But to your point, I don't remember the last time we mentioned the words domestic violence in this case. And again, that would be the important issue here. Remember, Zeke Elliott under the law, is not getting in any trouble for this at all. It was the league's own investigation doing this. But to your point, just like Deflategate, it has stopped being about the actual thing the player was suspended for.
All right, tonight, 8:20 Eastern time in Los Angeles, the 39th World Series winner-take-all game of all time. And if you're wondering just how significant home field advantage is, it isn't at all. Amazingly, in the previous 38, the home team has won 19 times, and the road team has won 19 times. Actually, the last two World Series Game 7s have been won by the road team after the home team had won 9 in a row. But in 2014, it was San Francisco taking care of business behind Madison Bumgarner. And then last year, of course, it was the Cubs in extra innings beating your Indians in Cleveland. The last time the Dodgers played a winner-take-all game in the World Series, their starting pitcher was Sandy Koufax. That's how long it has been. This will be the first ever Game 7 of the World Series in the history of Dodger Stadium, which after Fenway and Wrigley is the oldest ballpark in the majors. So there is an enormous amount of history, enormous amount of color. It just doesn't get any better than what we're going to get tonight.
And this feels like a series that should have gone to 7 games, right? With all we've talked about them, the hitting of Houston, the pitching, what was Kershaw, what's his legacy going to be? And right now, for him individually, he would need to get into this game and throw well, right, for it to go in the positive direction.
Yeah, if they win the World Series, then he gets to celebrate, of course. And he isn't the GOAT,
right?
But if he goes out there and he has a Bumgarner-esque kind of performance, he doesn't have to go 5 innings or whatever Bumgarner pitched that night. But if he goes out there and does anything then in a positive way, then it certainly makes a difference. Yes, this series has, for all the good that he did in this postseason, this series has not helped his legacy one way or the other. And what I'll say this morning is this. I said before Game 6, if you were a Dodger fan, you were going to remember the lead and your closer had the ball in his hands in Game 2.
Right.
And the lead and Kershaw had the ball in his hands in Game 5, and you couldn't get either of those games won. Now I think you're going to say the same thing for the Astros and you lose. For whatever it's worth, and I know it was only 1-0, but you had the lead and you had Verlander on the mound and a 3-2 lead in the World Series.
You did.
With Verlander, who has been basically untouchable and looked like he was going to be untouchable last night.
Yep.
If you wound up losing tonight, that's what you look back on.
As I said, he gave up 2 runs and to the 8-9-1 hitter, so he didn't come back out. And then it was Musgrove who gave up the home run to Jock Peterson, and that made it 3-1. So, we move on to this, and it's interesting. We talk about the Verlanders, we talk about the Kershaws and the Yu Darvishes, and I talked a lot about Rich Hill, but it worked last night how the Dodgers wanted it. Rich Hill throwing his 4 innings, or in this case into the 5th inning, mad for it getting pulled, but this time the bullpen had some rest. So they again, Morrow comes in after we talked about his 6 pitches, and he goes an inning and gets the job done. Watson, Maeda, and then Jensen does what he's supposed to do. 6 up, 6 down, 3 strikeouts, just with that bullpen we talked about before the series started, their strength. So let's see what happens tonight. But the name tonight, Lance McCullers, he's going to start this game. He saved Game 7 of the ALCS. So he'll be the first pitcher in postseason history to start a winner-take-all game after saving one earlier in the postseason. Madison Bumgarner did this in 2014, but in reverse order.
Correct.
In the reverse order ever.
Right.
So McCullers, not the name pitcher in this series by any stretch, got a chance to really light it up for himself.
He's been very good in these playoffs. I mean, I think you feel good about it if you're the Astros. Look, you can slice this thing up any way you want. Let me play you Mark Teixeira. Mark Teixeira on where the advantage is right now.
To me, the momentum has completely shifted.
Yeah.
When we left Houston, we thought that Houston had all the momentum. Now, with the Dodgers having, basically a rested bullpen again, and the Astros not being able to score runs, you got to think the advantage goes to the Dodgers.
Yeah, I would think so, right? In Game 7 at home. I
don't think so. I'll tell you why I don't. Here's the thing. The Astros cannot score on the road. All right, Altuve and Correa.
Oh, this stat is amazing.
Yeah, I'll let you read it.
This is what to keep an eye on, the 3 and 4 hitters for Houston. In their 7 Houston wins this year, they've batted .435 between the two of them. In the 6 losses, .070. I mean, that's it. So if they're not hitting, Houston hasn't been winning.
They've driven in 17 runs in their 7 wins and 0 runs in their 6 losses. So obviously that has to change. But the single biggest statistic in this series has been the bullpen. With at least 1 day of rest, the Dodgers bullpen has thrown 12 2/3 innings in this World Series, has not allowed a run. with no rest, they've allowed 14 earned runs in 15 innings and 9 home runs. So tonight they're on no rest.
Right.
So last night they were on rest. They had a day of travel. So when they had the rest, games 1, game 3, game 6, the bullpen again has not allowed a run. With no rest, games 2, 4, and 5, they've allowed 14 runs in 15 and a third innings. So to me, that's an enormous number going into tonight. Plus, you pointed it out, Darvish was all the conversation after the game 3 really centered around the incident with Gurriel and Darvish,
right.
And correctly and understandably so.
Agreed.
But lost in that is the fact that Darvish got lit up.
How quickly they had to get to the bullpen. And if they have to do that again tonight.
Now, tonight they will go to Kershaw, I would assume,
right, yeah.
and who knows what that means.
Yeah. That's the beauty of this, is when you bring in someone like that, it's like, what are you going to get? This is where you can, like Bumgarner, stamp something that says, you know what, your money in the postseason, or, you know, a guy still kind of searching for that legacy in the postseason.
So, look, the thing that the Astros have to figure out a way to do is score away from home. They're 2-6 on the road so far in this postseason. It's exactly the same thing that they had in their series with the Yankees, where the home team won all 7 of the games. That wouldn't be the case in this series, obviously, but the offensive numbers have been disproportionately different based upon the ballparks they're playing in. So if you look at it that way, then you say, yes, advantage to the Dodgers tonight. But I look at the bullpens, which is where I think this series has basically been decided in the games the Dodgers have won. And I think that tonight the advantage in that regard goes to the Astros. I actually, as much as Darvish has been a stud, I kind of like the way McCullers has been pitching. I kind of like him tonight going into the game.
Yeah, a game 3 again, he had 4 walks. I think he gave up 3 or 4 runs. But, you know, that compared to Darvish, it was a pretty stark difference.
So that's where we stand right now. Again, a Game 7 tonight. You will hear all of the action right here on ESPN Radio. You can't ask for any more than this series has given us and is going to continue for one more night. Meanwhile, the college football rankings brought to you by the 2018 Ford F-150. It doesn't just raise the bar, it is the bar. And so last night, no surprise that the 2 big boys from the SEC finished 1 and 2. Maybe a little bit of surprise, the order in which they went. Georgia 1, Alabama 2. Is that the committee trying to send a message? Is that it could be anything. It doesn't make any difference. Georgia has the best win between the two of them by beating Notre Dame by that 1 point. And so they're 1, Alabama is 2. Notre Dame is 3, Clemson is 4. Followed by Oklahoma and Ohio State, 5 and 6. Penn State 7, TCU 8, and then the unbeatens.
Yeah.
Wisconsin at 9 and Miami at 10.
Let me tell you what, that you want to start looking at. And this is what you do. You kind of look for your team. Where are they? Why are they there? There's a couple of teams to look at. We were wondering where they were going to put Wisconsin. And you saw, you just said it. They put them at 9, and they put Miami at 10. I mean, so those are 2, I think, fan bases that are going to be a little upset at that. The bottom line is you're going to have a chance to do something about it. For Miami, outside of the ACC title game that would come with if they are successful in what I'm about to say, where they could probably play Clemson. And really, if you're a Miami fan, if you take care of your business, I believe you're going to be there.
100%
Because
agree.
your road is this week, Virginia Tech, which is ranked 13th. Next week, Notre Dame, which is number 3. And then if you get to the ACC championship game against Clemson, they're sitting at number 4 right now. You win out. You win all those games.
Totally agree.
I'm telling you, you're going to be there. So while you're sitting at number 10, and we've seen teams outside number 4, and we'll get into that make it in the final ranking. And quite honestly, that's the only ranking that matters. I think in the first year, the first year of this, it was a number 16.
It was Ohio State, because they had lost a bad game at home. They were 16 in the first one, and they got all the way there.
Again, in 2014, there was a 2, a 5, a 6, and a 16. So 3 teams, not in the original Final Four, made it. In 2015, a 7 Michigan State and a 15 Oklahoma made it. And then last year, a number 5 Washington, number 6 Ohio State. So it's going to happen. These 4, let's just say it, these 4, the odds are so strongly against the first 4 last night being the last 4 in. So who has the chance? Miami, as far as I'm concerned, they control their destiny. They still now, again, as long as Notre Dame doesn't lose to Wake Forest this week and that game isn't as strong as it was, and those kind of things going on. But you can control. And Wisconsin, you can get. I know that the road to your Big Ten championship game isn't as strong, but once you get there, you're going to get a top team in Ohio State. As long as Ohio State doesn't lose. Again, we're talking about teams.
I don't think Wisconsin controls their destiny. I don't think they're assured of anything.
I agree with that. That I agree with. I think Miami does. I don't think Wisconsin does, which is kind of weird to say, but that's kind of where I think that was one thing I really was surprised at when the rankings were going and how they count back our guys do. And when they got to 10-9, I was like, oh my gosh, no love at all for those undefeated teams.
Well, Miami has a Virginia Tech team coming up that is ranked higher than any team Wisconsin will have played the entire season.
Right.
Then they get Notre Dame, who's 3. Then they would, in theory, get Clemson, who's 4. Now, again, these teams don't have to be 3 and 4.
Exactly.
We're just projecting out a bunch of things. But you do this sort of the way you play blackjack. You assume that's going to be a 10, and that's going to be a 10, and that's going to be a 10, and what else is going to happen? Right. So if all those things happen, in my opinion, Miami, if they win out, gets in. Wisconsin, it's a question. I mean,
agree.
To me, it's questionable.
I agree.
The only reason I'll say I believe they get in is that I just can't believe, politically speaking, and I know those people in that room aren't supposed to take this into account, but how can you not? I can't imagine a circumstance in which an unbeaten Power 5 conference champion gets left out. I just can't picture it. I don't care what else happens.
It's so wild,
I can't picture it. It doesn't mean it can't. It doesn't mean that it shouldn't, but I can't see it happening.
Here's the great setup to me is Notre Dame winning out. Most people think they're in, correct?
I definitely think so.
Think they're in. Georgia, Alabama. We've talked. I said this since week 2. I think they're going to meet undefeated in the SEC championship game, and if it is a last-second close game win for either side, could you imagine both them still getting in? Because
I could.
One of them would only have one loss.
Yes, I could see it.
That leaves one spot for, say, a Clemson that wins the ACC, an Oklahoma that wins a Big 12, an Ohio State that wins a Big 10. If those three, since they were next there, if they do that, only one of them can get in.
And
the other two would be out.
Yeah, in that well, look, there's a million permutations.
That's the fun of this.
Exactly. Let's pause on that because that's the one circumstance where the Big Ten championship game becomes critical. Because if it is Ohio State and Wisconsin and Ohio State gets the win, then Ohio State, even having lost that game to Oklahoma, would have that huge win at the very end. Because Wisconsin, if they don't lose another game, and they probably won't, will move up a little bit, you would think, as this thing goes on. They'll be a top 10 team for sure, and they might even be 7 or 8. We'll see. That's why this stuff is fun to talk about. It's magnificent for sports talk because anything can happen, and we can sit here and imagine it all.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Here we are. We're Mike and Mike. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests appear on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. They will include Kirk Herbstreit, who'll join us in just a couple of minutes. Looking forward to that with last night's first rankings for this year of the college football playoff rankings and a lot of interesting stuff to debate there. Obviously, we're going to a Game 7 of the World Series tonight, and we're talking about that here. We got candy issues.
Yes.
We also have a quick bit of news here. Adam Schefter literally just tweeting in the last minute here. And that is suspended Browns wide receiver Josh Gordon scheduled to meet with the NFL today regarding possible reinstatement per source. So we'll see if he gets the opportunity to come back and play.
Guy just, making his own trouble. And, see if he continues to get an opportunity to try and come back. We see talent when he's on the field at times, no doubt about it. But he obviously has some other demons. Very
quickly, if I could just offer my quick candy story from last night. So I mentioned yesterday, of the many things I miss about having little kids, I think trick-or-treating might be at the very top of that list. I so enjoyed that. And so the one thing that we have left with the kids is that my kids really enjoy handing out candy to the kids who come from the neighborhood. Right. So we did that last night. We're looking forward to it. I went out yesterday and I bought a ton. I had a ton. I had a ton of candy ready to go. So we live in a neighborhood that generally has a lot of small children, so they tend to trick-or-treat pretty early. Right. So 5:30, 6 o'clock, we've had very little. We've had very few people come to the house. And so the people that do come, I'm basically telling them, go ahead, reach in. Reach in with both arms.
There you go. Absolutely.
Take whatever you want. We're not going to get it. And then all of a sudden, I see what just looks like a mob growing outside my house. And we got hit late last night.
So you were in trouble.
Well, my disbursement was all off.
Yep.
So now I'm yelling, Mayday, emergency, someone make a run.
Bad position. You don't want to be that house, man, that I'm out of candy, turning the lights off.
I pride myself on being the house everyone walks away saying, that was the best house.
There you go.
Of all the house, the Greenberg house was the best one to go trick-or-treating at. So we had a little bit of a disbursement problem. Some of the kids who came late didn't get it as good as the kids who came early, but it all worked out.
But you know what's interesting is the fun you had walking around with your kids. It all goes in stages, as I told you. It all now your kids bailed you out in a different way, didn't they?
Yes,
because one can drive.
We have an extra driver.
Yes,
so
go get some more candy.
I'm sending somebody go to CVS for crying out loud. And the other thing I'll say is I made the observation. There's always the one dad walking behind the group drinking.
Oh, without question.
There's always that one dad who's like, he's got like 6 kids he's attached to, and he's got the red Solo cup, which is the universal sign for I'm drinking.
I got booze, I got beer, I got something.
So he only walks like a third of the way up the driveway and then waves.
Yeah.
He doesn't want those that. 7 are with me.
Doesn't want that alcohol breath permeating anything around the door.
But I had never noticed that guy before.
Oh, absolutely.
I noticed him last night.
I knew that guy. Never mind.
You may have been that guy. I was never that guy.
No, I wasn't that guy either. But I do miss those days. But I was happy. I talk about how I'm the big candy bar house, and I am. But I also bought a lot of little candy because I did hear over the last couple of years there are moms out there, and I kind of look and see if they're real little kids. Yeah, I'll go with the little candy because they say we appreciate that. That my little Johnny or Janie here doesn't need the full size Milky Way bar. So they're happy for the smaller candy that you get. So I kind of judge it by who's out there, but I'm giving out handfuls as well, the little stuff. Yeah, we don't run out of candy there. We have tons of kids too. But
it's fun.
Yeah,
it's a great. I love it. I absolutely love it. I love Halloween.
But Chris happened to be in South Bend, so she was handing out candy there, and she did. She said Almond Joy. Going back to that,
that's the one that gets left over.
Almond Joy was left, and she loves Almond Joy, so she wasn't sad about that. Whoppers, and you were to think I started some kind of national controversy when I said Swedish Fish as well.
People are very upset with you.
Swedish Fish, man, that's one of the things that gets stale first, by the way, if it's sitting around too long. I don't like Swedish Fish, and then there's nothing worse in the world than chewing a hard Swedish Fish. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. But one way or another.
God forbid you got any work done in your mouth, it's all coming out.
That's true. It's not my favorite candy either, but a lot of people seem to like it. Okay, Mike and Mike. So that's the Halloween story for this morning. Obviously, Game 7 of the World Series on tap tonight. We'll get to plenty on that in just a moment. You'll hear from Timmy Kirkchin and many more as the Dodgers force a decisive Game 7 where, in my opinion, momentum being nothing, I think the Astros have a huge advantage going to Game 7 tonight, and I will explain why shortly. But first things first, Mike. The first college football playoff rankings released last night. Georgia takes the 1 spot over Alabama. Notre Dame and Clemson rounding out the first 4, and Kirk Herbstreit joins us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line with his thoughts on this morning. Good morning, Herbie.
Good morning. How you guys doing?
Doing well.
Well, we're doing great. And obviously there was a lot there to watch. So for those who did not get to see all of you guys last night with your takes on the actual selection program, what, in your opinion, was the single most significant takeaway you had from the first glimpse at the way the committee's mind is working this season?
For some people, it's Oklahoma moving up to 5 ahead of Ohio State, who a team that they had beaten early in the year. I kind of look more at Notre Dame. I was really anxious to see where Notre Dame would fall in the first rankings. And the fact that they're in the top 4 all the way up at 3, and think about what they have in front of them. Not to say, hey, no problem, they're going to run the table. This will be easy for them, but it's very conceivable that they'll be favored pretty heavily in a lot of these games. And they, without a championship game, are in kind of pole position. And I think we've never really had Notre Dame up here like this when it comes to the 4 teams in the playoffs. So it's very deserving. They should be up there, and they've done a lot based on what they've been asked to do, the schedule they played, and so I think that's the thing that stands out. And the last thing I'll say, Greeny, is I don't know in the 4 years now that we've had this playoff that the committee has had a big of a challenge or a tougher challenge than what they had in the first rankings from 3 to about 7. Those teams you guys might have them a little bit changed here. I might have them a little bit changed there. But at the end of the day, I really don't have an issue at all with the logic and the rankings that the committee came up with this week.
And 3 to 7, they all have 1 losses. It's Notre Dame, Clemson, Oklahoma, Ohio State, Penn State. And we know a lot of this will play out itself. We just saw Ohio State and Penn State obviously played. Oklahoma and Ohio State played. I looked at Herbie. I tell you what jumped at me was 9-10. was what they thought of an undefeated Wisconsin and an undefeated Miami. So I'll ask you this. We kind of agreed, Greeny and I, that, and again, if their opponents keep winning as well, I think if Miami wins out, which means Virginia Tech, Notre Dame, and then Clemson in an ACC championship game, I think they're a lock to be in. And then we're trying to figure out, can the same be said for Wisconsin? Is it possible a Power 5 undefeated conference champion could be left out? Your thoughts on Wisconsin and Miami if they were to run the table?
First of all, I'm glad you brought those two teams up, because I think that for a lot of fans that aren't really familiar, that don't live this, we've all been trained over the years that the AP poll, they reward typically teams that are undefeated over the years, and teams with one loss, regardless of whatever their schedule is. If you're undefeated, you move up in the rankings, and if you have a loss, you move down. And I really applaud the committee for doing what they did. We don't know how good Wisconsin or Miami are based on the way they played and the teams that they played. So I think it was appropriate in this case to keep them down behind, I don't know, however many, 5 or 6 teams with one loss that are ahead of these unbeatens.
6.
Yeah, so I think that's important for fans out there to understand. And why it's important to be able to play some of those non-conference games that kind of help your resume to give you a chance. I think it's worth the risk of playing a gutsy, non-conference schedule. With that being said, you bring up a good point about Miami. They do have a pretty good run in front of them and teams that they have an opportunity to play. You got ranked teams. I mean, you're talking Virginia Tech, Notre Dame up at 3, and if they get through all that, now you got Clemson. I think there's no question that they're going to make a big move if they were able to run their schedule. Wisconsin's a very different case. The only game that they would really have against a ranked opponent would be in the Big Ten championship game. And I think at that point, Mike, it would just depend on what happened in front of them. They would need help. I mean, it's sad to say that you can win the Big Ten and need help and be undefeated. But I think Wisconsin, because of their non-conference schedule and because of the Big Ten West being so weak, that they would definitely need some help to be able to climb up. And the other thing, let's not just look at these rankings, and if you're a fan of a team that's, let's say, at 6 or 7 or 8 and below, and say, well, my team's out of it. This isn't fair. No, I can't believe this. We've seen many times teams come off the board. I think it was in 14. Ohio State was ranked in the first rankings at 16. Yep. They got all the way up. They ended up winning the championship. Oklahoma in 15. Their first rankings, they were at 15. So there are teams that can come off the radar and still make a run. And very rarely, when you see the first rankings of the top 4, does it hold steady. Teams are going to lose. I mean, it's just the reality of the sport, especially now that there's pressure on with these rankings. Teams will start to press. They'll play not to lose. They'll be upset. So there's going to be a lot of carnage between now and the next 5 weeks.
Mike and Herbie, brought to you by Allstate. Make sure you check out the Herbstreit and Fitzsimmons podcast. We're in agreement completely on Miami. We're in agreement, the three of us, I think, also on Wisconsin. Tell me if we're in agreement on Penn State. And it breaks my heart to say this because I love watching them play. They've played, and you've had several of the Iowa game, which is, to this point, really may have been the most exciting game of the whole season, and maybe up until this Ohio State game this week, whatever. They're the first team in the rankings, to me, that I think has no chance. Because if you look at the way the thing plays out for Penn State, Ohio State can afford to lose a game, and Penn State still won't wind up getting into the Big Ten championship game. No matter what else happens, they will always have that head-to-head loss against Ohio State that'll hold them back. They may be the second-best team in the country for all I know, but I think, Herbie, there are teams behind them that have a chance. But I don't see a road for Penn State to wind up one of these 4 teams.
You know, Greeny, that debate that people get into with college football scheduling about, hey, what's the point in scheduling a tough non-conference game? It doesn't really matter. Just the only thing that matters is stay unbeaten. This is another example. They played Akron, Pitt, and Georgia State in their non-conference. This is an example, and they didn't know how good Pitt would be. I mean, it's a rivalry game. This is an example. If they had Oklahoma up there, right, in their non-conference, and they beat Oklahoma, let's just for argument's sake, and they had that on their resume, and now they lost to Ohio State the way they did, and in grand fashion, and at one point on the road, unbelievable. controlled most of the game and just ended up losing the game. And then they ran the table. They would still be in the, hey, don't forget now. They don't forget in the non-conference, they beat Oklahoma. So when people get into that debate, because I know you and I and Mike, we've talked about that, what's the point in playing a tough non-conference schedule? This is why you want to take that risk. Because if you don't happen to have a great league that year, or you don't happen to have that anchor win or two, it helps you and it helps your resume to be able to have that tough game. So that's why I think it's important to consider that for athletic directors and coaches. You're right with Penn State, the one loss. Tell me that great win. The reason Ohio State was able to go, despite losing to Penn State last year, was that big win in Norman against Oklahoma. It's the reason Oklahoma now is ahead of Ohio State. Tell me what Penn State has on their resume that gets you really excited about what they've done. I mean, they dominated Michigan at home, who's a top 25 team. They've got Michigan State this week. That's it. And so the only thing they can do, I said this last night, is win by 40 or 50 every week. And the committee just can at the end of the day, after everyone starts to lose, is, hey, they haven't beaten a whole lot of great teams, but I'll tell you what, I wouldn't want to play them. They are really good. That's the only chance they would have. The committee would just go by the eyeball test, not the metrics, and they would just eventually have to put Penn State in because they, the goal here is to put the four best teams in. That's the only chance Penn State has, is just to look like one of the best four teams at the end of the year.
Is it? I look at a conference like the Big 12, Herbie, and I think that's the conference that maybe has the best chance, and I mean this unfortunately for them, to cannibalize themselves right out of this thing. Would you agree?
Well, I think it just depends on what happens in front of them. I think Oklahoma is right now, after the rankings came out, despite the loss to Iowa State and Iowa State controlling its own destiny within that conference. They've got a really tough stretch of games right now. It starts this weekend, Bedlam and Stillwater. They got TCU after that. Even a game like West Virginia can be tricky. And then if they get through all that, new this year is the Big 12 championship game, where the first two teams in that conference will play in Dallas. So you could what you're saying makes sense, because it is a really, really tough road to navigate through. But I guess I go back to what I brought up to you guys, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks ago, when I said, hey, what about this notion about Notre Dame getting up into the top four? What about the idea of Alabama running the table potentially? Georgia looks really good. What if they run a table? What if Alabama and Georgia meet, and it's one of those games that goes back and forth, and it comes down to the last possession? Either team wins. That committee at the end of that is going to look at those two teams, again, with the goal, not being politically correct, the goal putting the best four teams in the playoff. Notre Dame would be in at 11-1. The winner of the SEC championship game would be in. And the loser would have a very, very strong. How could you look Georgia, for example, in the eye and say, yeah, I know you're 12-0. I know you beat Notre Dame. I know you've been dominant all year long. But I'm sorry, you lost your last game by a field goal to Alabama. Now you're not one of the top four teams. That might be the first time we may have an opportunity to see two teams from one conference go. And if you have Alabama and Georgia and Notre Dame, now you're arguing between that last spot, between potentially if Clemson runs the table, if Oklahoma runs the table, if, I don't know, let's say Ohio State runs the table. Now you pick one of those teams. Washington runs the table out in the Pac-12. One team would be able to go, and that's where I think people don't want to see this thing go to 6, go to 8 teams. That's where you would start to get really, really serious in the off season about this isn't fair. How can we only have 4 teams? You're leaving 3 Power 5 conference champions out. It's ridiculous. We've got to fix this. That's where this thing could go if Georgia and Alabama and Notre Dame all get in at the end of the year.
I totally agree, and I like everything about the scenario that you just paint. I think we both, Mike and I, both nodding, so I think we both agree. Mike and Mike, Herbie with us. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. Let me ask you this, because you know him far better than I do. Nick Saban says, I could care less about the polls, and we all understand he cares about everything. Do you think he is happy or unhappy that his team is not number one?
Nick Saban is the master getting his team to peak on a given Saturday. The fact that they came in at 2, as much as he said, forget about the rankings, it's poison. It's because he's always anticipating, more than likely, that they're up at 1. The fact that they came in at 2, even though between me and you, it means nothing. Mm-hmm. He will use that. He will use that in a way of disrespect and whatever he needs to do. That Georgia's a better team. Let's just put it to you this way: I wouldn't want to be LSU this weekend because they're going to get the heater from Bama this week. And if you're a gambling man, I'm sure Alabama looks very friendly to you this week. They will be very, very aware and very focused as they take the field this Saturday. And what about everybody wants to talk about Alabama hadn't played anybody, and they played Florida State at the beginning of the year. It was a different Florida State team than right now. How about who they still have to play?
Yep.
LSU's up there in the top 20. Mississippi State's up there in the top 16. Auburn on the road. And then an SEC championship game against Georgia. So by the time they're done, they'll have played a pretty impressive schedule. But to your point, Greeny, yeah, they are going to be well aware of that number 2 ranking. And he'll get them to take that personally. And they'll show up with the eye of the tiger Saturday.
I agree. I think he loved it. I'm picturing him sitting in a room, and when Georgia popped up at number 1, he got out of his chair screaming and cheering.
I'm going to use this.
Like we always see those kids at Selection Sunday for the basketball. Herbie, great job. Well done. Now this stuff gets really fun, and we'll be looking forward to it. And we'll see you this weekend. Thanks, Herbie.
Absolutely. Okay, guys. See you, man.
That's Kirk Herbstreit with us every week here now this really is getting into the nitty-gritty.
And let me say this, and this is, in my opinion, and for anybody saying that, whether they're people that work here, anywhere, I'm equal opportunity here. If you are one of those that says 2 teams from the same conference shouldn't make it, then that means you don't believe in this system. That means you don't believe in the playoff where the whole object is to get the 4 best teams at the end of the season. It is absolutely possible that 2 of those best teams can come from the same conference. And I think we could easily see it this year. So if you say, I like this system of picking the best 4 teams in the country, but there can't be 2 teams from the same conference, I have no idea what's going on in your mind. No clue. That makes 0 sense. You can say, I hate the whole system, and 2 should never be in it for then that's fine. But if you say, I'm cool with them picking the best 4, but it can never be 2 from the same conference, to me, that's hypocritical. It makes 0 sense.
And for what it's worth, the BCS, we had 2 teams from the same conference play each other for the national championship with Alabama and LSU not that long ago. Right. This is a bit of a departure from most of the topics of conversation we have this morning, but I think it's an important one. We've got a lot of crazy stuff going on around the world of college sports right now, particularly college basketball, right, with the FBI investigations and all of this stuff. And I'm seeing a lot of quotes attached to Dr. Mark Emmert, who is the president of the NCAA, talking about how we need reform and we need change and people have lost confidence in us and all of that. And we all understand they don't have the same kind of teeth and power, nor should they, that the FBI does, the federal government does, for obvious reasons, and all that is fine. But the one thing I would say in response to Dr. Emmert is the one area that is your purview, the one area that is what you do, let's make sure we take care of that. The case involving a kid by the name of Braxton Beverly is an absolute disgrace. An absolute disgrace. And it's gotten some traction on Twitter, et cetera. People like Jay Billis, and I have a story here from Gary Parrish, who wrote about it from CBS, have talked about it a little. But let's make sure everyone knows what happened here. So this kid named Braxton Beverly was a highly recruited player who decided to go to Ohio State because he loved Thad Matta. He felt very close to Thad Matta, just had a great relationship with Matta, who was the coach at the time. He, like many other kids, decides to go to school early,
right?
And he's going to take a class early in order to start, getting a couple of credits out of the way. The Ohio State had a bad year,
right?
But the athletic director came out and said, we're standing behind Thad Matta. He's going to remain the coach here. He's going to be here. So the kid enrolls in a class. They then wind up firing Thad Matta at a very unusual time. And you might remember this. They waited all the way into June, and they fired the coach.
Right.
At which point, Braxton Beverly, who had gone there solely for that, decided he wanted his release. The school granted him his release, immediately said, sure, you can go, no problem. We understand you came here. The timing of this is unusual.
Right.
They granted him his release. He decided to go to NC State. Now, because he enrolled in a class, if he had never enrolled in a class, this would never have been a factor. So if they had fired Thad Matta right when the season ended, as everyone else fires their coaches, he would never have enrolled in a class.
Right.
He wouldn't have become a student
right.
at Ohio State, and he would not have had to have sat out a year if he decided to go somewhere else. But he enrolled in a class because he had every reason to believe that Thad Matta was going to remain the coach. Okay, he goes to NC State. No one makes a big deal of this, including at NC State, because they assume this is the easiest waiver to grant of all time.
Sure.
They file a waiver. They petition for a waiver to the NCAA. Let this kid play here without having to sit out a year. From what I'm reading, Ohio State supports it.
Yes.
Ohio State writes a letter of support for the kid to have this year that's waived, for it to be waived and him allowed to play immediately. And the NCAA rules against it. The NCAA has stood in the way. He is not eligible to play this year. He is not eligible to play this year. Ohio State, according to this story I'm reading, a source told CBS Sports, Ohio State let the NCAA know it supported it. So, as it's written here, literally nobody would have been bothered by the NCAA granting the waiver. And yet, they didn't. It denied Beverly's waiver, meaning he will not be allowed to play this season because he started taking a class at Ohio State 2 months after the athletic director told the world that the coach was going to remain the coach.
Yeah, I mean, that was the whole thing.
This is inexcusable. It's unimaginably ridiculous. And so, again, to Dr. Emmert and everyone else at the NCAA, we get that there are problems and that you've lost control of certain things. And most of those are not your fault. But this is what you do. This is the NCAA's job, is to make decisions on who is and who isn't eligible to play. And there is no earthly explanation that makes sense for this kid not being allowed to play. And this is a decision that should be and must be reversed immediately.
Yeah, listen, I agree with you. It's ridiculous, all because he started the one class. There will be those on the other side that say, hey, you don't choose the school for the coach, you choose it for the school. And you see he started classes there. And you know why they don't. This wasn't for this one kid. This was for what it can happening down the road again.
But it has nothing, because if he had not enrolled in the class, he would have been allowed to go, and he would not have to have sat out a year.
Right.
So it is not about whether he picked the school for the coach or not. This is exclusively, just make sure this part of it is clear. Maybe I didn't emphasize that enough. This happened exclusively because he enrolled in a class.
Right.
If he had not enrolled in a class, God forbid, a student athlete should enroll in a class in college.
Yeah.
That's what he is being penalized for.
Right.
He is being suspended for the year because he enrolled in a class. It has nothing to do with the fact that he shouldn't have picked the school for the coach, because if the coach had been fired in March or in April, and he would never have enrolled in a class, he'd be playing at NC State right now. Mike, there isn't any explanation for this.
No, you're right. You're right. There's no way to defend it.
So what do we do? So we sit around and we say, we wring our hands.
What are we going to do?
Well, I don't know. Maybe someone should get mad and someone should do something.
I think
it's just ridiculous.
I think a lot of people are mad. But again, I agree with you. They've done a lot of things you're mad at, but what are you going to do? We always say that, okay, we don't like it. We want it to change. Emmert says things should change, but nothing changes, or things don't change unless they want them to change quickly. How quickly did one player say, my God, I'm going to bed hungry? Was there snacks for everybody after that? When you couldn't have peanut butter and a bagel, all of a sudden one player says, I'm going to bed hungry, and the world stood on end, and it seemed like a day later the NCAA said, okay, food for anybody. Give them snacks anytime they want. So they can do things if they want to do them. So I don't know what the answer is. Pressure them more, but...
Well, that's what we're trying to do. That's why I brought it up. So I've seen a little bit on this on Twitter. Jay Billis was tweeting about it. And Jay tweets about stuff like this all the time. And maybe sometimes because there are so many things that he tweets about that it just loses a little bit of its steam, even though Jay has a much louder and better voice on this.
He does.
And knows 10 times more about it than I do. Yeah. But so we'll bring it to this show. And I'm telling you right now, this has to change. This kid should be allowed to play this year. Straight Talk Wireless, nationwide coverage on America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE networks. Is this the most important thing that ever happened? Of course not. But this is the one thing they control. This is the one thing you can do, NCAA. Let this kid play.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Mike and Mike were presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. You couldn't ask more than what we have in the sports world right now. Winner-take-all Game 7 tonight at Dodger Stadium. Incredibly, the first ever winner-take-all in a World Series to be played in that ballpark. It's the third oldest park in the majors behind Fenway and Wrigley, and it's never hosted a Game 7 of the World Series. Well, it will tonight, and, of course, it's all decks on hand tonight. We expect to see Kershaw. We expect to see Keuchel. We'll see what happens. We got the college football playoff rankings, and we have Will Cain in our studio to talk about it all. Good morning, Cain.
Good morning, fellas.
Oh, did you want me to jump?
Well, I was just turning to you.
I'm just waiting.
I thought you could greet him as well.
I'm waiting again for all those people. We know it's all hands on deck.
Oh, yeah.
We know it. Bob Picozzi,
It's all decks on hand, as you know, in a Game 7.
Sure.
Right. He did that years ago. Now, he made the mistake. He didn't do that on purpose. He made the mistake.
It was 2001,
yeah,
and it was the Yankees and the Diamondbacks, and they're going to a Game 7, and we're talking about it, and Bob just misspoke, and he mixed up the words deck and hands, and he wound up with all decks on hand, and we liked it so much that anytime we ever had a decisive game, we always referred to it as an all deck on hands.
All deck on hands. So stop the Twitter. Don't send anything. We know we're doing it on purpose for that reason. So just wanted to get that.
What is your big picture take right now in the World Series, Will Cain?
Redemption game.
For?
Well, mainly for the Dodgers pitchers. My friend on First Take, Max Kellerman, constantly uses this phrase, revert to the mean, right? And baseball is the constant or the perfect revert to the mean sport. You play enough games, you have enough at-bats, and you ought to over time become what you are. You'll have highs, you'll have lows, but over the long haul, you'll be what you are. And I think Yu Darvish and Clayton Kershaw have shown us what their mean is, what they are. And the kind of performances Clayton Kershaw has put up in the playoffs, I don't believe is who he is. I don't believe he's incapable of clutch performances. I don't think he folds in the playoffs, even though we have ample evidence at this point. That seems to be something afflicting him. And similarly with Yu Darvish, he's been great, not only with his years with the Rangers, but in his time with the Dodgers over the last several months. He's been incredible. So they both underperformed in their last World Series performance. I think tonight they both have a chance for redemption.
Yeah, and that's the odd thing about this sport is you never get to see that starting pitcher get redemption until a situation like this, where all of a sudden it's not the norm anymore. It's not the pitcher will go however many innings and the bullpen takes care of the rest. It's when is Clayton Kershaw coming in the game? When is Dallas Keuchel coming out of the bullpen? That's the beauty of this. It's so abnormal to what a regular season, even early in the postseason, is.
Well, strategically, it's also an interesting question. At what point in the game is Kershaw the first option out of the bullpen, and when does that cease? Which is to say, if Darvish is in trouble in the third, I think he's going to Kershaw.
Absolutely.
If Darvish takes you into the sixth or the seventh, then you can be in your regular rotation of relievers.
And
you won't guys assigned an inning, you stay with that, right?
And you probably don't see Kershaw.
You don't see Kershaw at all, unless you wind up in extra innings or something like that. What can we get from Jansen tonight? And I'm looking at Hembo as well as anybody else. He got 6 outs last night. What can we realistically expect out of Kenley Jansen tonight?
Listen, that I don't know, but we know when that bullpen doesn't have a day of rest, they're not as good as when they do.
And remember last year, Aroldis Chapman was on fumes in Game 7 last year, and he almost gave that. He gave the lead back in Game 7. They wound up winning the game. The Cubs wound up winning that game in extra innings, but he did not. He was unable to close the door for them.
Jensen comes in tonight in the same situation, protecting it's tied, protecting I guess a one-run lead. You Dodgers fan, you feeling confident?
Not for 2 innings. You know, it's the last game of the season. You give Jensen a chance to prove that he is who he has always been. But you don't put him out there for 2 innings. You've got Kershaw's arm sitting there. You only need to ask Jensen for 1. And
it's like an all-star game. Go out there and throw 1 inning. Each of you throw an inning.
Yes.
The Dodgers, by the way, have never won a winner-take-all World Series game. They're 0-2 all-time at home in World Series winner-take-all games, and I'm just assuming both of those go back to Brooklyn because we had the stat earlier this morning that they've never had one at Dodger Stadium.
Right.
So
by the way, and you
factor
in all this redemption, and it's easy to root for Clayton Kershaw because, I don't know if I think we all like this. We root for players to be who they are or to rise above that. We never want to see somebody shrink from actually who they are at their best. So you root for Kershaw, you root for Darvish, but I don't bet against the Houston Astros at this point. I mean, there's no analytic, there's no deep analysis to explain. I think that team's just scrappy, and maybe I just have come to see Jose Altuve as the embodiment of the team. But when they need a hit, when they need a home run, they seem to get it. And in a Game 7, I just don't bet against the Astros.
Well, that's where to look. Altuve and Correa, I mean, those two, when the losses, they don't hit. They're hitting 070. in the losses, and 435 or 485
yeah,
something.
They have no RBIs
None.
in their 6 losses and 17 RBIs in their 7 wins.
So let's see how they're hitting tonight.
In the last 2 series. Will Cain is here. Straight Talk brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. This time tomorrow we'll be talking with Stu Gotts. Right now we're talking with Will Cain. College football playoff, the first rankings last night. These are great fun. How significant they are, that's in the eye of the beholder. I think there were a few things last night that were reasonably significant, but either way, it's all enormous fun to talk about. What was your big picture first and foremost takeaway?
First of all, I'm glad Georgia's number one. I think Georgia deserves to be number one. I am someone that believes in the resume. I think if you've proven it on the field up to the moment in time that we are discussing it, then you deserve to be rewarded for that. And Georgia, with their wins over Mississippi State, which was a blowout win, and the very, very impressive win over Notre Dame, deserves to be number one over Alabama, who really doesn't have an impressive victory on their resume. I mean, Florida State was going to be that, but hasn't turned out to be that. So I don't.
A lot had to do with the quarterback getting hurt. He wasn't hurt in that first game.
That's true.
Right.
So I don't care if Vegas says Alabama is a 10-point favorite over Georgia on a neutral field right now. I think that we've seen what we've seen on the field, and Georgia deserves to be rewarded for that. Similarly, I'm really glad that Oklahoma is over Ohio State because of the head-to-head matchup. I heard you guys earlier this morning. The truth of the matter is, although it's a close call, I think Oklahoma should be above Clemson. I think that win over Ohio State, I don't care how early in the season it's been or it was, you have to reward that. And if we don't reward that because it was too early in the season, then we have to be consistent. Then Wisconsin needs to be higher because we're punishing Wisconsin for not having that impressive win. We're punishing Wisconsin for not playing an impressive non-conference schedule. Don't we on the other side of that equation have to reward Oklahoma for doing so?
The one thing I'll stop you on Wisconsin, yes, I agree what you're saying, and I don't think that we should separate, and Golic, you and Mikey made a pretty good case this morning for how college is just different from the pros, so it makes sense to do it. But I do believe in looking at the totality of a team's resume, and if we're going to make such a big deal about these games that are being played in September, we can't now pretend they don't matter. So I totally agree with you. The thing that is hurting Wisconsin is that their conference is split in half, and their half of the conference is hurt. If they had Michigan State even on their side, if they had Michigan on their side, they're going to play Michigan, so they will get that game. But if they had Ohio State or Penn State on their side, we wouldn't be having any conversation about their non-conference schedule. What they're hurt by is their conference schedule. The best win they're going to have at the end of the season is going to be Northwestern, maybe Michigan.
I guess what I get my feathers up about is this dismissal of Oklahoma's win over Ohio State because it was too early in the season.
Yeah, I don't like it either.
Whether Wisconsin is lacking conference wins or non-conference wins, what we're saying is they're lacking impressive wins. So we have to, on the other side of that coin, say Oklahoma belongs above Ohio State and have a real debate about Clemson. Although Clemson has impressive victories, some of them are getting less impressive as the season goes on.
Let's look and see if that Oklahoma win over Ohio State, when all this is said and done at the end, comes out to be a feather in their cap to help them, like it did Ohio State last year. That's one of the things that if Ohio State didn't beat Oklahoma last year or play a team like Oklahoma, they wouldn't have been in. So I get what you're saying now, but let's wait till all the resumes are out, and then maybe that will be that one final tick for Oklahoma that says, what can separate? Oh, yeah, they beat Ohio State early in the season, because that's exactly what they did for Ohio State last year when Ohio State beat Oklahoma.
I think that's the reason that they have a better chance to get in than Ohio State does, now that they have a conference championship game and everything else. Ohio State has one great win over Penn State, but if you sit back and analyze the overall body of their season, Oklahoma's loss all of a sudden looks a lot better with Iowa State having beaten TCU and playing a little bit better. I think if all things – let's put it this way. If everything else winds up being equal and they put in Ohio State over Oklahoma, that will be so inconsistent with what they did a year ago. And I understand they don't have to do the same things. Their whole job is just to pick 4 teams. But you have to have some reasonable explanation for why you did it. If they put in Ohio State this year over Oklahoma, all other things being equal, that will be the opposite of what they did a year ago.
Yeah. That would be criminal. If they both win out and then Oklahoma racks up victories over TCU, Oklahoma State in a Big 12 championship game to add to a head-to-head win over Ohio State, there is just no way that Ohio State goes in over Oklahoma.
The scenario that we kind of, I hope it happens because that means Notre Dame is in, is if Georgia and Alabama undefeated in the SEC title game, close game, 1-point game, 3-point game, does the loser still stay in? If Notre Dame runs the table, are they in? So that means you have 3 teams in and 1 spot left for 4 power conference champions.
Yes.
And only one could get in. Do you think that's a scenario? And do you have any problem with two teams in the same conference getting into the Final Four?
I think it's a realistic scenario. I think it could be even a probable scenario, and I have no problem with it. I think Notre Dame has given you every reason, and I'm no Notre Dame fan for what it's worth. I think they have given you every reason to be rewarding them. They should absolutely be in that top four, and that fourth spot would go to Oklahoma. Because by the virtue of the schedule, then Clemson would be out.
Right.
Well, no. We have the ACC champion. It would either be Clemson or Miami in a debate
Clemson
with
or
Oklahoma.
Miami, right?
Well, Miami would have to have lost to Notre Dame for this scenario to be set up.
Oh, yeah. That's exactly right.
I mean, there's all these teams wind up playing each other, and that's the thing. If you look at 9 and 10, Wisconsin is ahead of Miami, but Miami, I think, has a path, and Wisconsin has a more complicated path.
Listen, Miami, I have said, if Miami beats Virginia Tech, Notre Dame, Clemson in the ACC title game, they're in.
I agree.
I think they are
absolutely tough to leave out.
They push Notre Dame out. So what we're boiling this down to, in my estimation, is the Pac-12 is out and the Big Ten's in trouble.
Big Ten's in trouble, and the Big 12 with Oklahoma, they play Oklahoma State, they play TCU. Now they have a Big 12 championship game. Could put themselves in a nice position.
All right. So once again, no decisions get made as these weeks go by.
No, they don't.
But it's great fun to talk about. We're Mike and Mike. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, including Buster Olney from the World Series coming up shortly. Trevor Manich with more college football conversation. Will Cain is in our studio right now. What did you think of the Patriots trading away Jimmy Garoppolo?
First of all, it shows the ultimate faith that Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots have in Tom Brady. I mean, that has to be your number one takeaway. To clean out your quarterback stable, to not just trade Garoppolo, but to trade Brissett roughly a month before that, shows that no one in the Patriots organization is worried about Tom Brady approaching any sort of age-related cliff. Just not happening. Now, I can't say it's not happening. No one is worried about that. That's number one. Number two, I don't think the Patriots got enough. I think they mishandled this entire Garoppolo trade situation. They waited until the last moment. That means the leverage was not with them because they were under a time crunch. They traded him for a second, and then the news comes out within the next 24 hours that the Browns and Bengals bungled a trade, didn't get the paperwork into the NFL in time that would have sent A.J. McCarron to the Browns for a second and a third. So you're telling me that A.J. McCarron, whose contract is up the same time as Garoppolo's, they'll both be free agents next year, is worth a second and a third, whereas Garoppolo is only worth a second? The major takeaway on that has to be the Patriots did not get maximum market value for Garoppolo.
Yeah, listen, I agree with that. And the Patriot, but this was a move, and I think what Bill Belichick said is completely correct. We probably had, in my opinion, the best quarterback situation in the league for the last 2.5 years, but it's just not sustainable given the way things are set up. He's right. And I said this all along. There's no way. How are you keeping Garoppolo next year? And you're not moving on from Tom Brady. You're not franchising a backup, and he's not going to get a free agent deal that's going to be better than something else he's going to be offered. Other teams know that as well. You know, that they're not working in a vacuum here. So other teams know that situation. Other teams know he could leave in free agency. Why would we offer the moon for this guy?
There are also a million stories out there with a million different takes on this. If you read 10 different things, you'll get 10 different versions of how and why this happened. One of them, and I think it was from Albert Breer, but they all kind of get measured and mumbled up together in my head, is that they were willing to pay him, and Garoppolo wanted to go. That Garoppolo is basically saying, I'm not going to sign here even if you pay me market value because I'm not getting on the field for the next 2 or 3 years. I want to go someplace that I can play. Now, I don't know that to be true, and that's one version. I saw another story out there the other day that Belichick wasn't sold on keeping Brady and that Kraft stepped in and said we have to make this statement because Brady is like a son to him. Again, this is stuff I'm reading. I have no idea, and we'll probably never know. There's a dynamic in there with Kraft and Belichick and everything else, and who knows what role everyone played in it. But clearly I agree with you. The big picture takeaway is Tom Brady now gets the slate clean to try and do something that has never been done before. To be playing this sport or any sport at the absolute apex at age 41, 42, 43. He'll get that chance if he's able to do it. If you had to bet an amount of money that mattered to you, Will Cain, on how long he'll be able to take it, where's the over-under set?
3.5, 4 years.
That long.
Yes.
3.5, 4 years. He's going to be 43 years old, and he will be playing, I'm not sure how we're going to parse this, like top 10 level quarterback play in the National Football League.
Yes, I'm glad I didn't say 5, by the way. I was going to go 5, but I wanted to come back on it and still get an extra year or two, and you'd be outraged. So you are at 3.
I'm not outraged, but I'm surprised.
Well, yeah, because it hasn't been done. But there's a lot of things that haven't been done that get done there's a first time for everything. I had said this year and 2 more years, and I'll stay with that.
So that puts us roughly the same?
Yeah, but roughly the same. And, now is the big coming out with the TB12, the method, and how it's going to happen, the next big thing out there to sell and do his thing on,
You sound skeptical, Golic.
Well, listen, I'm not skeptical. It works for him, but this is what we see in that industry all the time. This is the next great protein powder. This is the next great workout piece of equipment. This is the next great exercise. This is the next great workout studio. There's always going to be something, and then you just find what works for you. This is working for Tom. More power to him. It's working with him in a way that's never happened before in the NFL. So, listen, if it works for him, great. And if I'm not begrudging him anything. I'm just not at the point of saying, well, his way must be universally the greatest way ever. It's just the next thing in a long line of different ways somebody can do something, and it works great for him. So, great.
I appreciate your skepticism on how the South Beach diet turns into the all-protein diet,
the cabbage
turns into
diet,
the Whole 30.
The soup diet.
I get that, and I appreciate your skepticism on that. But that being said, you should read this TB12 method article on ESPN.com by Tom Gernod and Seth Wickersham. It's interesting. I think that health, you have to say that over the last 50 years, human beings have been living longer, living healthier, and performing at a higher level later into life, not just in athletics, but in every aspect of life. And yet, at the same time, it's one of the things that we sort of adopt slowly. How can I perfect first my body and now my mind? And you come away from that article thinking, Tom Brady is dedicated in every aspect of his life to peak performance, and he's not just limiting that to what he does on the football field. We all hear about the diet. We all hear about the practice. But what you'll learn in this article is he's also focused on his mind. He's doing brain exercises that were intended for people that are either elderly or had brain impairments to try to exercise your brain into a higher level. The guys that developed the method out in Silicon Valley was like, this wasn't really intended for people who are functioning at high levels already to go the extra mile. But Tom's looking for a way to take his brain activity, his thinking process, that next step. And I think he's doing things. I don't know if the exact methods will work, but I think he's focused on things that we'll all be focused on in 10, 20 years, thinking about how can we be smarter. We're already thinking about how we can be healthier later into life. And so, Greeny, while every piece of evidence says to you quarterbacks don't play beyond 40, 41 at high levels, I think if there's someone to do it, this is the guy, because he's dedicated every aspect of his life to doing that.
And it's also the perfect storm. He's a pocket passer who will go down, who will throw the ball away. He won't try and make it. That comes into play as well. His style of play, no running quarterback would be in this position or will ever be in this position, a guy that runs more. So it all lined up for him. But all you can do is tip your cap to him. Because of what he's done, going down as the greatest ever, and then finding a way to stay healthy and have his body and mind right to play this late
I get irritated. We give Aaron Rodgers so much credit for the arm talent that he was born with. And we look at these guys who have these natural gifts that we look at and marvel and go, I could never be that. And Tom Brady's gift, clearly, and it's not a gift because he created it, is his discipline, is his dedication, which you have to say. Every professional athlete to some extent is dedicated to being great, but there are levels to this, as Stephen A. Smith said. And the level of his dedication right now appears to be unmatched, and that in and of itself needs to get the same applause that Rodgers' arm strength does. It should.
It's just not as spectacular to watch.
Right.
It's not as much fun to watch as it is watching Rodgers scrambling to his right and then flinging a dime 30 yards up the sideline.
The two players that live off their mind and discipline over and over has been Peyton Manning and Tom Brady. And injuries caught up with Peyton Manning, and that's been the one thing with Tom. He only had the one injury outside of the normal, nicks and wear and tear. But those are the two that really you see that game from the neck.
For all the talk of the cliff, it's worth pointing out Tom Brady's on the field and Aaron Rodgers is injured right now.
That's exactly right.
All right, before we let you go, and we got Buster coming up from the World Series in a minute, we got into a debate, I think it was last week with you, about quarterback classes and all this kind of stuff, which years quarterbacks were better. Right now, Deshaun Watson versus any of the guys we were talking about. Dak, Mariota, Winston, Wentz, and Goff. If I told you could have Watson ahead of all of them, would you take him ahead of any of them? You're starting a team.
No.
Who are you taking?
I put him third. I take Dak, Wentz, and then Deshaun.
Oh, you're such a Cowboys fan.
It's not
it's
true.
ridiculous. You're taking Dak ahead of him right now based upon what you've seen?
Sample size. Dak went 13-3 with the third highest QBR in his rookie season, and he's already
the best
what is
running
he, second
game we've
highest
ever seen. Like they were running the ball like it was 1974 in Dallas
amazing
last
how
year.
much success you discredit success. That's just
I'm
amazing.
discrediting nothing.
Deshaun's
Watson
amazing. He's amazing. That doesn't mean I have to start the team with him over Wentz and Dak right now. 7 games? 7?
Yeah. I mean, at one point last year, Wentz had only played 7 games.
You're such a...
And Dak had played 7 games.
I may be a homer, but you are a sucker for flashy things. Big throws by Rodgers and 7 games by Watson.
Golic, which one you doing? You had.
Oh no, I'm just having
like a tennis
fun
match.
to
I
you
understand
guys.
that. Who's right?
I would take probably Wentz, Dak, and then Deshaun.
Oh, look at that.
You're both out of your mind. No one is better than Buster Olney, who wakes up at 5:30 in the morning Los Angeles time to go downstairs to the lobby of his hotel in Los Angeles because he does not want to disturb the guests who are occupying the rooms nearby because he'll be talking loudly with us on the phone. And he joins us now here live as we look ahead to tonight's Game 7. Now, when we had you on the other day, Buster, someone was giving you a hard time down there in the lobby. Is everything clear? Is the coast clear for you right now?
Yeah, everything is clear. When I sat down about 20 minutes ago, the same security person came through and said, hey, sorry about that. I realized that you were on the phone. And I said, no, it was more than just me being on the phone. You were on national live radio.
Huh.
And I said, you ever see the show Mike and Mike? He goes, oh, yeah, that's better than First Take. So take that.
How about that?
Oh,
okay.
like that.
Oh, you got to like that.
Wow, that's a great opinion, and the show's ending.
There's but for 2 more weeks, this guy's going to love us.
There you go.
All right, that said, let's get to the action here. Buster, a million questions. We can keep looking backwards, but I think it's more important that we look forward. What can we expect from Kenley Jansen tonight?
Well, it doesn't really matter what we can expect. The fact is that Dave Roberts is going to line him up to get as many as 6 outs tonight. It's pretty clear that the Dodgers have their plan with their bullpen, and they're sticking to it, despite the numbers that we've seen in this series. When the Dodgers bullpen has rest, and they have in this series in games 1, 3, and 6, as Paul Hembekides told us, no earned runs in like 12 1/3 innings. And when they're not rested, he's still going to go to them. And they've gotten pounded, 9 homers in 15 1/3 innings, 14 runs. He's going to use tonight Brandon Morrow. He's going to use Kenta Maeda. He's going to use Kenley Jansen. And he's probably going to use Clayton Kershaw. Dave told us before the game yesterday, Kershaw texted him yesterday and said, I want to pitch in Game 6. And Roberts texted back and said, get ready to prepare to get the last out of Game 7. And I don't think he meant that literally, but there's no question about it. Kershaw is in his plans tonight.
Okay, so that was my question. When would be the plan? Is it if Yu Darvish, God forbid for Dodgers fans, has another outing like he did last time, you wouldn't see Kershaw early to try and keep kind of that starter mentality early before going to the bullpen?
Because Alex Wood has experience coming out of the bullpen, my guess is that going into tonight, the first guy out of that pen is going to be Alex Wood. Let me tell you, Yu Darvish had a reputation among his teammates in Texas as being somebody who puts a lot of pressure on himself. Some people go out there with a heart rate at 60. Darvish is more like 200. We saw it in the last start he made. He couldn't command anything. He couldn't command his slider, and he was awful. And I suspect, given all that's at stake tonight, that the game starts with Rick Honeycutt, the pitching coach of the Dodgers, probably will have his hand on the phone. And if they see Darvish and get a sense in Darvish's warm-ups that he's potentially going to have one of those games, man, they will move quickly. And I think Wood will be the first guy. My sense is that probably, depending on where they are in the Astros lineup, Morrow could be in there. But Kershaw will be among the 5 options out of the bullpen after Darvish.
Mike and Mike Buster Olney again live in L.A. tonight. Game 7 of the World Series. It's the first ever winner-take-all Game 7 of the World Series to be played at Dodger Stadium. The Dodgers have only played in 2 of them in their history, both on the road, and they're 0-2 in those. And both of those came when they were playing for Brooklyn. So give us a sense. Altuve, Correa, in the 6 games that the Astros have lost in this series and the previous one, they've driven in 0 runs. Almost all of those have come on the road. Why? Why the enormous difference in those guys? I understand the configuration of the ballpark in Houston is unusual, but that can't be enough. Why have these guys not been able to get it going on the road?
I wish, Greeny, I could give you an answer. I can tell you this. They're both, they both seem absolutely comfortable. We went into the Astros clubhouse before yesterday's game. That was about as loose a clubhouse as you can imagine. And I still think it's going to be that way. And I talked to Correa, and he told me that, he said, I'm having a lot of trouble sleeping, but it's fine. He said, because when we lose, I sleep like a baby. When we win, I can only sleep like 3 or 4 hours because I'm just replaying the game in my head. He's waking himself up, swinging in his sleep, making throws in his sleep, that sort of thing. He's having a blast. Altuve seems to be the same way. I can't give you a good answer as to why they're not hitting on the road.
Where'd you see Verlander start to veer? I mean, he was throwing strong, and then to give up 2 runs to the 8-9-1 batters seemed to be a little odd. What did you see out of him?
I think it was the game changed when finally he was forced to pitch out of the stretch. He was so dominant early. First pitch strikes, I think, to 14 of the first 16 batters, using his fastball. But then when Austin Barnes got that hit and Verlander finally had to work out of the stretch, he lost his command. And, Chase Utley came into the game in a double switch. Guys, Chase Utley hasn't had a hit in a postseason game since the division series last year. 29 straight at-bats, and Verlander hits him with a pitch. And again, because he has to work out of the stretch with Taylor up, 97-mile-per-hour fastball, leaves that over the plate, and Taylor has been so great, sticks it the other way. I really think the fact that the Dodgers finally got him to have to work with runners on base was difference-making in that game last night.
Buster Olney is with us from L.A. Mark Teixeira said afterwards that all the momentum right now is on the Dodgers' side. I've never believed in momentum in baseball. Where do you see advantages going into tonight?
Well, I think the advantage in terms of the starting pitching, I think, is without a doubt with the Astros. Lance McCullers has pitched in big moments in this postseason, and he seems completely comfortable. I mentioned about Darvish. Guys, in his last start with the Rangers, knowing that there were a lot of scouts in the stands, and there was so much riding on that game, Darvish was getting ill early in that game behind the dugout. On the other hand, McCullers just seems so much at ease in these spots. But I think that once you get past the starting pitching, the advantage will start to veer toward the Dodgers because they have maybe better relief options. The Astros will have Dallas Keuchel. Brad Peacock has been so terrific in this series. But, of course, the back end of their bullpen, they don't even have a set closer situation. This is game 179 on the year for the Astros. They don't really have a setup man. They don't have a closer because the bullpen has been such an issue. So if the Dodgers carry a lead through the Darvish part of this game, I think the big advantage swings their way.
Buster, saw some of your tweets during the game that you thought Dave Roberts, some of his moves were surprising. Where were you going there?
Yeah, I tell you what, I mean, the Dodgers have their plan, and they're sticking to it, where they're using Morrow. Brandon Morrow has a chance to pitch in, and I'm assuming he's going to, pitch in every game in this World Series. They continue to lose him. They continue to lose Maeda. They continue to use Kenley Jansen. And when they took Rich Hill out of that game last night, Dave Roberts was booed in Dodger Stadium because Dodger fans weren't happy about the fact that they took Hill out after 4 innings in Game 2. But you know what, Dave? The Dodgers analytics staff, they stuck to their guns. They took Hill out last night. They go to that bullpen last night. It was terrific. It all worked out for Dave last night. All those moves that, I was sitting there wondering about. I can tell you Aaron Boone and Dan Shulman doing the game on ESPN Radio. I was sitting right next to them. They felt the same way, and it all worked out for Dave.
Golic loves Rich Hill.
Oh, I feel so bad for that guy. Just keep throwing great, dude, and they'll just yank you out of the game anyway. Man.
Yeah.
Mike, yeah. It doesn't get any better than Game 7 of the World Series. Who will reign supreme? Coverage tonight, 7 Eastern on ESPN Radio, ESPNRadio.com, and the ESPN app presented by AutoZone. What do you think of that, Buster? I mean, you've been following the sport all of your life. And there seems to be very little room right now, and maybe this goes back to the crux of, I was reading the interview that Ken Rosenthal did with Girardi, Joe Girardi, the now former manager of the Yankees. Guys sticking to their guns and not really being willing to alter the plan based upon what they're seeing play out before their eyes. Is that something that you favor or don't favor? Is that something that you think managers are somewhat forced to do so they can explain things afterwards in a way that makes sense? Why do you think that's happening?
Because the game is more and more and more is being rooted in numbers. Manager making a call based on gut instinct, that is sort of being shoved aside. That's not as much a part of the game. They're looking at players, and I say managers. It's really front offices that dictate. In a lot of cases, starting lineups. They dictate bullpen scripts to the managers. They look at it like baseball, like Stratomatic cards, where it's all based on numbers. I think there are a lot of circumstances in which I think that it doesn't apply. I just haven't seen a lot of games. Rich Hill was rolling in Game 2, and he got taken out of the game despite that, and it started off a series of dominoes that really hurt the Dodgers in Games 3, 4, and 5. I personally don't like it. I know there are a lot of baseball people who don't like it, but to your point, I think because front offices want to explain what happened after a game, they stick to it, and that's what they'll do tonight as well.
All right, Buster, keep that spot in the lobby staked out for tomorrow morning. We're going to need you badly here as we look forward to Game 7 tonight. Thank you very much. We really appreciate you doing this. Get some rest.
Absolutely, and I'll say hi to your friend here.
Okay, please do. That's the dairy farmer in Buster Olney. He's up early no matter what.
Yeah,
he was on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Get instant gold status at Shell. Join the Fuel Rewards program now at fuelrewards.com/gold.
We always bring up the blackjack. Be consistent. I hit 16s. Dealers show 7 or higher all the time. What do? You have a 12, dealer shows a deuce. By the way, I hate when the dealer has a deuce. He might as well have a wild card. I hate it.
12 against a 2, you do not. 12 against a 2, you take a card, and you do 12 against a 2. I thought you were saying 11 against a 2.
No.
Because 11 against a 2, do you double?
I double. If I have 11, I double on everything.
Okay, yeah.
Even if the dealer has a face card, I double. If the dealer has an ace and doesn't have, obviously, the blackjack, I
12
double.
12 against
a
2, you take a card.
See, I look at the table, and if one card I know is going to come out, I won't. But I'll make sure a card comes out. I want a card to come out. So if somebody else takes a card out, I'll stay. But if no card comes out, I'll hit.
Why?
I just think
that,
at least
that's not influencing the randomness of the following card, right?
That's my way of going about it.
But you recognize that is everything you've ever made fun of me for, all of my golf gods and everything else. Yeah. You're just basically saying so long as one other card comes out of there, the next one isn't going to work.
And a lot of times it's more than one because depending on what people have, they're going to.
What if you're in the anchor chair?
And no cards come out, I'll hit.
Well, you're in the anchor chair, so you no cards coming out after you.
No, I know that. So I always want to sit in the anchor chair.
So you're talking about what has happened before you?
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. If I'm in the anchor chair and a card has come out, I'll stay. If no cards come out, I'll hit. A 2 against a 12. That's just how I roll.
I'm trying to understand the logic of it.
There is none.
Okay,
there really is.
Right.
Because for the most part, you should hit that every single time.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, fair enough. But
I consistently do it different every time.
I remember the one time we sat next to each other at a blackjack table, and you were yelling at me to hurry.
I wasn't yelling at you, and I don't do that to other people. I know you. That's why I was just questioning some of your stupid moves.
The moves were fine. It was taking me a second to calculate what I had.
Oh, yeah, you can't count fast enough either.
That's what you were yelling at me about. That's what's the whole quick math thing. Yeah. That's where that all came from.
The best of Mike and Mike.
For those of you wondering, why would we be a little bit out of breath? And why is the studio taking a second to come back into place? We just did the plank for player, which we were thrilled and honored to do.
See, here's the difference. As we bring Trevor Matich into this, because I'm going to bring him into this, former offensive lineman at BYU and the NFL for a bunch of years. We planked for 82 seconds, right. And then we had time left in the segment, and you and Bickler and Hembo decided you wanted to do push-ups. And me and Paul, who, again, does the sound here, he was out there planking as well. We didn't. And they asked, why aren't you doing push-ups? I said, I was asked to plank for 82 seconds. I'm not doing any more than that. And, Trevor, it's reminiscent of for testing before a season, you have to do 8 gassers, which was the width of the field, there, back. You have to do it in 40 seconds or whatever the time was, there, back in 40. And I would hit the line at 40. We all would as a defensive line. Right. And every now and then the coach would be like, you guys could be faster than that. We're like, yes, But you said 40 seconds, and we have to do 8 of these. Why would I do one of them in 30 seconds? I'm going to do every one of them in 40 seconds because that's what I was asked to do.
We are coachable.
Yes.
If you tell us to block that guy, what do? We block that guy, not that guy, and his girlfriend.
Right.
We block that guy. But by the way, I was amazed at you guys planking for 82 seconds over there. But you do need to know that section of the floor has just quit its job.
Yeah, I would think. And I've got Purell working like crazy.
First thing Greeny asked because he put his hands on the floor is like, do we have some Purell?
The floor felt a little bad and a little cold and a little not so nice. But
how many people would actually know what the floor in this room feels like? Ever.
There's 5 of us now.
You do. Yeah.
All right, let's get down to business here. Avi, we'll get back to our coverage of the World Series again. Game 7 is tonight, and you can't ask for any more than this series has already given us, and hopefully there are a few thrills left in store. And, of course, the action will be here tonight on ESPN Radio. But a lot of the conversation today, Trevor, comes from last night's first reveal of forgetting about the rankings. I think it's the first look we get into the mindset of the members of this committee, right? There's always little peculiarities and little changes and all of that. So with that thought in mind, what did you think was the most important stuff that came out of last night?
The most important stuff is that it appears, based on this ranking, that the committee has abandoned its usual cuisine of shrimp and croissants, and they've gone to burgers and brats.
Okay.
And this is solid. I mean, it's really solid. There are a few things you could quibble with in here. But when it comes to the most important thing, the top 6 or 7, they're right. And it was a good combination of eye test and resume. I fear that we have gotten so caught up in this new language of resume that we lose sight of what actually happens on the football field. The guys that are sweating and getting their teeth knocked out. The guys that are not as good an athlete that beat the better guy. Right? We lose sight of that because we're so deep into the spreadsheet. But Alabama, I think, is the best team in the country. Do you guys agree with that?
I agree.
Yeah, I do.
Yes.
But through no fault of their own, they have not beaten a team. They haven't played a team
right.
that's currently ranked. So they're not ranked number 1 right now. Georgia is, because Georgia is pretty close to Alabama, but they've beaten 2 ranked teams, and I think that was the right thing for the committee to do.
As far as when a team beats another, we saw how it helped Ohio State last year, and Oklahoma beat Ohio State this year, and they show up in the rankings ahead of them right now. Do you think it's fair if it's used against you if you lose late as opposed to losing early?
I think it depends. That's a great question, Mike. It depends on the nature of the loss. For example, Clemson goes to Syracuse and they lose, but their quarterback was gimpy early in the game, and then before the first half ended, he ended up getting knocked completely out of the game. Oklahoma State loses to TCU, but their right guard and right tackle were injured, and TCU took advantage of that because the depth wasn't there. So if you lose because of injury, I think it should be seen differently than if you lose early in the season or late in the season, because the committee looks at them as data points. And the thing is, you're on the field playing the game. If you're not good early in the season, but you're better late, if you lose games early in the season, somebody else was better than you early in the season, and that should not be erased, because those guys that beat you early in the season, they competed too, and they prevailed.
Mike, we've got Trevor Manich in our studio here looking back at what we saw last night. I am interested in your take on Clemson, because I get that Clemson, and you just talked about the injury. I'm not 100% sure I agree with you on discounting games where there was injury, because injury is such a big part of football, and depth becomes such a big part of it then as well. But the one thing Clemson has working against them is they have the worst loss, with no disrespect to Dino Babers and all of that. Oklahoma's loss is much better, especially with Iowa State winning again, and Ohio State's loss is much better. So were you at all surprised that Clemson is ahead of both of those teams?
No, because I see the injury thing differently. But you make a great point that injuries do play a part. How do you overcome those injuries? And the quarterback for Clemson, Kelly Bryant, didn't play defense, did he? And the defense barely put a speed bump in front of quarterback Eric Dungy in that Syracuse offense. So I get that. I think the biggest reason is that they've been very, very good otherwise. And they've got 2 wins and convincing wins over ranked teams, 13 Virginia Tech, 14 Auburn. So I think when you combine looking at this team on defense, overall on tape, looking at the defense that other than Syracuse is one of the 2 best overall defenses probably in the country, along with Alabama, and throw Georgia in there, one of the 3. I think you can take a combination of that eye test and their resume with those 2 ranked wins, and it's reasonable to me to put Clemson at number 4, even though they've got that loss.
So as we look, this is the 4th time now we've had an initial first 4 ranking. 2014, 15, 16, and 14. Ohio State was 16th in the initial ranking, ends up in the top 4, wins the championship. Second year, Oklahoma was 15th in the initial ranking, ends up in the top 4. Mm-hmm. Is there a team go past 10, double digits, that has the best shot in your mind of being an Ohio State or an Oklahoma and jumping into the Final Four?
Yeah, I think we can just go to 11 at Oklahoma State. We talked about that loss to TCU. Those offensive linemen are back now. And they barely beat Texas, but their center and right guard were out. On my college tour, I drive around the country in the summer on my own time, my own expense, put in about 14,000 miles this last year. When I went by Stillwater to visit Oklahoma State, they talked about how much trust they had in their starting offensive line, but that they couldn't afford to lose anybody because they didn't have any depth behind them that they could rely on, to your point, Mike, because it's something that is important, that depth. Well, when they lose those two guys, they lost one game, they struggled. But when they're all together, I think they're as good as anybody in the country, top to bottom. Their defense isn't a stone-cold stopper, but they play really well with the lead because they're very good at getting behind the line and pressuring the quarterback. They play this weekend, number 5, Oklahoma. Then they have the Big 12 championship game. If Oklahoma State gets hot, they have the juice in terms of the schedule, in terms of teams that they can beat that are ranked, that they could get right back into this.
Mike and Mike, Trevor Managers here, presented by Progressive Insurance. Progressive celebrating 5 years and more than 500 cars donated to vets. To learn more, visit keystoprogress.com. I have a two-part question, but I'll do them separately. Let's start with the first. If Notre Dame wins out, do you think they're safe? Which is to say, we've seen TCU be in the top 5 going in top 4, excuse me. I think they were number 3. Going into the last weekend of the season, win a game and fall out. So do you believe Notre Dame, if they win out, are safe in the top 4?
No. I think they have a great case, but I don't think they're safe because they do not have that one box to check, which is the most important single box, or at least it should be, which is conference champion. And so you don't necessarily hold it against them, but you don't give it to them for extra credit. And the reason TCU dropped out was because of other teams that now were able to get that credit for conference championship. That's why the first year of the playoff, it was whiplash for fans because they're accustomed to the rankings where if you don't lose, you don't drop. But you could win and drop 3 or 4 spots at the end of the college football committee rankings because other teams now log a conference championship. You don't. Bam, they move right up ahead of you even though you won your last game. So Notre Dame is not safe. But I think Notre Dame has a very good case, and if they win out, I do believe they will be in.
Okay, so I know you've been high on them from the beginning of the season on this 14,000-mile journey that you put together this summer. I know you went there, and you were very high on them. So that brings us to the second part of this, which is if Notre Dame gets in, and Alabama and Georgia play some sort of all-time great SEC championship game, and the loser is only one loss, maybe the two of them get in, we're looking at 3 power conferences being left out of this mix. Mm-hmm. How does that sell? You know the politics, the shrimp and croissant guys, better than I do. How does that play, and what conversations begin as a result of that?
You know, the conversations there among the committee are you better get that last one right. Because somebody, actually a lot of people, are going to be very mad. Because under that scenario, 3 Power 5 champions, 3? Yeah, 3
yes.
are not going to make it in. And so if just the Big 12 is out, I think, you know, that's happened twice, and the world did not end. But all of a sudden, if you get, for example, the ACC and the Big 10 and the Pac-12 out and say Oklahoma wins out and gets in, because if Oklahoma wins out and if Ohio State wins out, then they both have one loss. They're both conference champions, and Oklahoma has the head-to-head over Ohio State. Imagine Ohio State wins out and doesn't make the playoff, right? There will be much wailing and gnashing of teeth.
How about an unbeaten Wisconsin? How about an unbeaten Wisconsin?
An unbeaten Wisconsin would only have one thing to hang their hat on, and that is whoever they beat in the Big Ten championship game. Most likely Ohio State.
And that they played a Big Ten schedule, albeit on the weaker side of the bracket, but that's not their fault. They didn't make that.
No.
And they did not play a great pre-conference schedule. I understand that part of it. But an unbeaten Big Ten champion to be left out.
Right, and that could very well happen because they will probably go through the regular season undefeated without having beaten a team that's ranked. Now, it's not necessarily their fault. The thing is, it goes to the question of good enough or deserve it. You could take Clemson, last year's national championship, champion, out of the ACC, drop them into the MAC last year. They still would have been the best team in the country, able to win the national championship, but would they have made the playoff?
No.
But it's not their fault, right? Wisconsin's in the same situation right now. They thought that scheduling BYU would be a good non-conference game. It turns out that BYU, rather than a solid bowl team with 9, maybe 10 wins, maybe 8 at the minimum, that turned out to be not what Wisconsin expected. So they don't get a positive result from beating BYU in terms of resume enhancement. And so it's not their fault. But here's something that is their fault. When you watch them on tape, solid on defense, solid running game, but their passing game doesn't have enough dynamic playmakers on the perimeter to threaten really good defenses, better defenses. So you'll be able to come up and jam up that running game if you're a better defense. Lesser defenses have been able to jam up Wisconsin's running game at times during games. And so Wisconsin on tape, I don't think has the same case that an Alabama has.
How about a Miami? That, to me, if Miami wins out, Virginia Tech, Notre Dame, Clemson in the ACC title game, or if those teams keep winning, they're in, right? To me, they are a lock to be in if they ran the table.
If they ran the table, they haven't beaten a team that's ranked now either.
Right, but
they have Virginia Tech coming up.
Exactly right.
Right?
And then Notre Dame.
And Notre Dame, and then they would have the ACC championship game probably against Clemson.
Right.
And so, yes, if Miami wins out, they would enhance their resume. The thing about Miami is that they have needed too many low-percentage miracles at the end of the game.
I agree. I don't think they're going to do it,
Yeah.
but we're doing all hypotheticals here.
Yeah.
If they were somehow able to do that, to me, I think they would be a lock-in for the way they finish up.
How awesome would it be?
Yeah?
You know what I love about Miami?
It wouldn't be awesome because they'd have to beat Notre Dame, which I wouldn't really love.
Well, okay, yeah.
But you know what I mean.
Miami's defense is playing not necessarily with all the talent, but with all the swagger and attitude of the Miami defenses of old, and they're fun to watch.
They are.
Trevor Manich is here. We're Mike and Mike. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Do you have anything else on the rankings? Because I have a few other questions for Trevor Manich. I just happened to notice as we were talking, and if I seem to be looking at my screen, it's because I find this interesting. I was just sent Todd McShay's updated top 32, his new board, the McShay-McBoard, of NFL draft prospects. And his number one prospect remains Sam Darnold. Now, it is my perspective from where I sit, and I don't pretend that I watch every one of his games. And I know that coming into this season, people were talking about him being a once-in-a-lifetime prospect, him having a grade that you would have to go back to Luck and Elway, better than all these really good guys we've seen recently. And my perspective, having watched what I've seen of him this year and listened to the conversation, is that it's been a very disappointing year. The decision-making continues to be a problem. They've obviously lost a bunch of games, and he's even talking about not coming out. But if he does come out, in your opinion, is he the number one pick in the draft?
Absolutely not. He'd be my number 4 quarterback at best. And I thought that at the beginning of the season. I like Sam Darnold. He's got to fix a few things, mostly mentally. But I think there are other quarterbacks that if I were drafting right now, I would draft ahead of him. My first quarterback that I would take right now is Mason Rudolph of Oklahoma State. He's the guy that best combines college necessities, run-pass options, et cetera, with NFL skills. Because you see him run college plays and put NFL throws into them. It's phenomenal to watch this guy on tape. Darnold has not responded to adversity in the way that an NFL quarterback needs to. In other words, he's pressed too much. And early in games when the score is not out of hand, but when his teammates around him aren't performing well, he's forced the ball into tight spots that are really risky and throwing interceptions. You do that at the end of games because you just have to make a play because the clock is running down. But he'll do that in the second quarter with the score tied at 10. And that contributes to now Notre Dame or USC falling behind. The other thing that worries me, so he's got to fix that. It's a mental thing, and that's correctable. The other thing that worries me is his big wind-up delivery. When he's feeling it, that ball will get out quickly and it'll go where it needs to go. But there's not a lot of quarterbacks in the NFL that have been successful, that have had really, truly quirky deliveries. There have been some. Most of the time, most of the time it's a pretty standard delivery. So he's got to overcome history in order to be able to make that delivery work consistently in the NFL.
And I think, to your point, I'll get to, but I agree about Darnold. He has forced some things when there have been other decisions to make on the field that have shocked me. So
can I just confirm that then you said he's fourth? So Rosen and Allen are second and third?
I'd have Rosen. Allen. I'm torn between Allen and Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield
is a pro prospect.
He's just that baller. He's not real tall. Everybody jumps on Drew Brees and to give hope to shorter quarterbacks. He's about 6 feet tall. But in talking to Lincoln Riley, his coach, on my tour, I asked him, what about Baker Mayfield do people not understand? What gets lost in the spectacular scrambling that he does? And he said, from the pocket, he is an incredibly accurate passer, especially on deep balls. Well, what do you need in the NFL physically? You need accuracy on deep balls from the pocket.
Yeah, I'm not sure about him at the next level, but I don't want to just discount him because of his size, because you do see a Drew Brees and stuff like that.
Yeah, Russell Wilson, but I mean, there are very few of them.
Talk about beating history. That's Mason Rudolph. Name me a Big 12 quarterback that has been successful in the NFL.
Right.
And I know Andy Reid just went up to get Mahomes, but we haven't seen what he could do yet. Because I agree with you. You just watch a guy fling the ball around. Mason Rudolph is incredible. But you see Big 12 quarterbacks fling the ball around to wide-open receivers an awful lot. He's got an arm that can make the throws. I agree with you. We've not seen it from a Big 12 guy into the NFL, but I do agree in kind of the shifting of that type of quarterback coming into the NFL and being able to perform. I agree about Darnold, makes bad decisions. I like Rosen. I do like Allen as well. Darnold, I wouldn't be stunned at all if he were to go back.
He has to go back.
I completely agree.
Yeah,
I
he's a huge risk right now to be drafted, and I think he'd be third, fourth round.
The only time you wouldn't go back is if, everyone said that about Michael Vick. He wasn't ready to go, but you can't get higher than number one in the draft.
Right.
So you go.
Right.
But Darnold, in my opinion, if he said I'm coming out, is not going to be the number one pick in the draft. And if he is, that would mean everybody discounted what they saw on the field and just watched him throwing shorts and a T-shirt, and elevate him there, which always blows my mind.
And they saw some amazing throws in the Rose Bowl against Penn State. I mean, he made some throws that were otherworldly.
Yeah.
He saw angles that were open that nobody else thought were open. And when that ball left his hand, I was thinking, no. And then it found its way through defenders into the hands of a receiver for a touchdown. I'm like, oh, nice throw there, Sam. Here's the thing you got to worry about, though, if you come out too soon, when you're not ready. Because of the rookie salary cap, it's no longer that much of a risk to draft a guy and get rid of him.
Right.
So if you're not ready to make a statement early, you'll get labeled as that guy that really probably won't be able to do it. You need to come out as NFL ready as you possibly can, because you don't have that financial lever over a team that they have to keep you for a while because they can't afford to get rid of you soon.
I just scrolled quickly through McShay's top 32. He has three quarterbacks in his top 32. He has Darnold number 1. He has Josh Rosen number 5. He has Josh Allen number 6. He does not have Rudolph, nor does he have Baker Mayfield in his top 32 prospects. The other thing I want to ask you about, Trevor, while I have you here, is people in and around Washington know that you do the Skins games, the pre and the post and all that kind of thing. And I'm fascinated by the Kirk Cousins dynamic in all of this. And you're much closer to it than we are, so I wanted to get a take from you on all of that. We see, I think there had been a conventional wisdom that Cousins' ultimate destination was going to be San Francisco to play with Kyle Shanahan. That seems to have gone by the wayside now as they make the move for Garoppolo. So for everyone around the country who's sort of watching this thing with interest, what's going on with Cousins, and what is a reasonable expectation of where it winds up?
A reasonable expectation is either that he stays with the Redskins, because there are some reasons to stay there from a career standpoint. There's a lot of speculation that he doesn't like Bruce Allen, the team's president. And that doesn't matter, though. If you don't like that guy, have him put the contract down. You sign the contract, close the door, and say, "Now, don't talk to me for the next 5 years."
You don't have to see him ever again. That's exactly right.
And so whether that speculation is true or not, to me, is completely irrelevant. Stay at the Redskins. They've got a good, talented, young offensive line that's on the rise. They've got one of the best receiving tight ends in the league in Jordan Reed. They've got Chris Thompson at running back, one of the best third down running backs in the league. They've got to get that wide receiver situation put together, but he excels in Jay Gruden's system. He's got good protection when everybody's healthy. Why would you want to leave there and go to a team that is building from the ground up and run for your safety for the next 3 or 4 years before they can adequately protect you? That's thing number one. So I think there are reasons why it makes sense for him to stay. But if I'm Kirk Cousins, I don't want to go to a team that's struggling. I'd rather go to a team that's a quarterback away or nearly that. So Jacksonville has been mentioned as a destination for him. Ben Roethlisberger at Pittsburgh is always speculating that he might retire this year. Well, at some point, he might just do it.
Yeah.
And imagine if he steps away and Cousins steps into that situation.
Yeah. How nice would that be?
How about Arizona? That's another team that is solid in a lot of ways that he could go to, instead of going to a place like Cleveland where, okay, you can go there and spend the best years of your career waiting and watching while they're trying to build up a team around you.
No, I'm with you on that, but there's a half a dozen teams that you just named, and there are others, Denver and other places.
Jacksonville?
But he mentioned Jacksonville,
yeah.
He said that one, but Denver and some of the others.
Denver, great call.
You know, there are a bunch of places out there that you could go and potentially win.
Right, but Kirk Cousins is worthy. He is worthy of being a franchise quarterback and being paid like it. And all you have to do is look at what happened last week. They had 3 and then eventually 4 starting offensive linemen out. And yet they were 2 special teams gaffes away from beating the Dallas Cowboys. And Cousins stood in the pocket, took the hits, even though he's on a 1-year franchise deal, time after time after time, and completed 67% of his passes with no protection from 3 offensive linemen that they signed off the street 2 days before the game.
I'm excited to see, because we don't see free agent quarterbacks, franchise guys hit the market. And this is in the NBA where there's only one amount that he can get paid. I'm really excited to see the amount of teams that come after him and the offers that get on the table for him.
You know what's interesting, though, is what's going to happen to the salary cap. We're used to it going up and up and up every year. With NFL ratings and attendance and things like that, will it continue to do that? I don't know the answer to that question. But to me, if I'm Cousins, I want to get something locked in right now.